guarantee for the all sector. The establishment of the National Women Entrepreneurship Development Center, which intend to put focus on the need of women micro-entrepreneurs. The National Financial Inclusion Strategy has set one of its targets on reducing women financial inclusion by behalf. An economy commerce strategy launched recently is to improve digital entrepreneurship, support for e-commerce, startup also for youth and women. Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, inspired by emerging economic opportunity in general and urged by impact of COVID-19 pandemic, in particular, we should envision a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient ecosystem for women, entrepreneurship, and economic empowerment in digital age. In the advance and unlock the potential of women economic and entrepreneurship empowerment, we have to jointly work together in order to create a favorable environment enabling women to grab the opportunity and potential. In this regard, we would consider with the focus on following issues. Create an ecosystem can respond to the need of micro, small, and medium enterprise, SME, women entrepreneurs, including improve the legislation and society barrier to limit women's rights and potential in the economic sector. Focus on human resource development for women and girls through upskill and reskilling program including STEM education. Promoting financial and digital inclusion for women and girls through financial and digital literacy and support to credit, market and information accessibility for startup and business development. Encourage and support women to seize new jobs and career opportunities that are in line with market and social contexts such as green economy, digital economy, and care economy. Lastly, broadening the coverage of social protection system, family care policy, and unpaid care, and domestic work, including investment policy, care service, and social welfare. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech about the status and the situation of women in Cambodia. Next, I would like to invite up, on behalf of Honorable Thapelo Ahmad, the Mayor of Johannesburg, South Africa, in his place and on his behalf, we'll have Ms. Astrid Al-Anani come and give a speech at the podium.
Thank you, Chairperson of the session. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. Her Highness, Sheikh Fatima bint Mubarak, Mother of the Nation, all distinguished guests and delegates, I'm honored to address you and to deliver an apology of our Mayor of Johannesburg in South Africa, Honorable Thapelo Ahmad. His speech is available and will be submitted for delegates to access later. I believe it's a very interesting paper. It does talk about the trends and developments. And if I'm allowed, Chairperson, Mr. Thapelo indicated that in giving an introduction and background to his paper, that it is, although it's written in the context of America, the 1982 best-selling book by John Naisbitt, Megatrends, 10 New Trends Transforming Our World, identified what he termed 10 critical restructuring impacting lives. These were, at that time, the shift from an industrial society to one based on the creation and distribution of information. The move in the dual directions of high-tech, high-touch, which was matched by a compensatory human response. The fact that people no longer had the luxury of operating with an isolated, self-sufficient national economic system. Instead, they had to acknowledge that they are part of a global economy. Also, the restructuring from a society by short-term consideration and rewards in favor of dealing with things in much longer time frames, in cities and states, in small organizations and subdivisions, they rediscovered the ability to act innovatively and to achieve results from the bottom up. The shift from institutional help to more self-reliance in all aspects of life. Also, the discovery that the framework of representative democracy has become obsolete in an era of instantaneously shared information. The giving up of dependence on hierarchical structures in favor of informal networks. This, he predicted then, will be especially important to the business community. More Americans are living in the South and West, leaving behind the old industrial cities of the North. From a narrow either-or society with a limited range of personal choices, they exploded into a free-wheeling, multiple-option society. The fourth industrial revolution. Then fast forward 40 years to the global south. One sees the megatrends taking on new shape on top of what we see from Naisbitt era. Here, we hear of the fourth industrial revolution and the problems related to it. Amongst these are the socio-economic consequences as well as the nature of global megatrends that together determine the strength, dynamics, and trajectory of civilization development. The new technologies related to REF 4.0, in other words, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and smart factory, and megatrends are pushing the thresholds of cognition and possibilities, redefining the relationship between mankind and artificial intelligence, which implies the need to redefine phenomena and processes. The key megatrends for economic, social, and environmental change can be categorized as follows. There's digitization, there's globalization, urbanization and suburbanization, and demographic changes. Research undertaken has so far come to the conclusion that dynamics of technological change, the scale of access to information and data, and the imperative of the ability to use them universally cause new socio-economic inequalities. Climate change, food supply, and sustainable development. Due to the fact that there has not been a historical precedent on these technological developments, it implies that new challenges in the area of production and distribution of public goods and services through the implementation of the function of inclusivity have to be faced. Additional global megatrends emerge as a result. Among these are the question of sustainable development and green transformation on the economy and a knowledge-based economy. With the world continuously changing and adjusting, we have witnessed some changes that are positive, while others have been negative. It is therefore important to be conscious of the changes that are emerging so that their negative effects can be mitigated, while the positive effects are amplified. The notable major current trends are the urbanization, migration, climate change, population growth, biodiversity loss, as well as the emergence of pandemics such as COVID-19. All of these trends affect food systems in several ways. A clear understanding of the implications is critical when considering how food systems can be strengthened and made more resilient to withstand the impact of these trends. Climate change is threatening all aspects of food security. Low and middle income countries are projected to be affected to the largest extent. Yield reduction and price increases further increase the incentives to expand production into forest and grasslands, which would in turn accelerate climate change. urban food supply chains will have to adjust to shifting regional supplies and increasingly erratic volumes. Heat and water stress will further amplify the negative human health effects, especially in densely populated areas. Biodiversity could be a crucial contributor to improved food systems outcomes, yet it is continuously degraded. Many valuable plant species are already threatened, and population growth, urbanization, climate change, and current market forces increase the pressures on habitats for biodiversity. Direct threats also emerge from current food production systems that contribute to degradation through heavy use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. Current food systems are already failing to deliver for the poor, contribute to environmental degradation, and fail to withstand disruptions such as the effects of COVID-19. Around 66% of Africans already face food insecurity. The population is projected to double by 2060, and food supply will need to change, diversify, and increase drastically in order to overcome the current and emerging challenges. Here, the supply to urban residents will be most critical, as urban populations will triple by 2050. And already by 2030, half of the population will reside in cities, with the majority of the population increase likely being absorbed by informal settlements. These areas will require attention to ensure that they are made more resilient to buffer the worst impacts. Food systems, trends towards more processed and less nutritious food are already negatively impacting different segments of populations, with the coexistence of multiple forms of malnutrition and increasing diet associated with non-communicable diseases. Therefore, alternative systems will have to be developed in order to avoid increasing health problems. While focusing on solving or mitigating the acute problems, Chairperson, we need to ensure a clear vision towards a more resilient, sustainable, and equitable food future that is able to address the needs of all segments of society. Yet, there remain critical knowledge gaps for action that need to be addressed. Food choice motives are highly complex and interact with other needs and strategies. These are often context-specific, and generalization remains difficult, with limited evidence of low and middle-income countries. Overall clarity on intervention logic, design, and monitoring will have to be ensured in order to truly advance the functioning of the food system for all, and especially for vulnerable people that are currently ill-served. Globalization, the rise of globalization is significant for development. When one has to examine the concept of globalization and its key features, one also has to consider the various perspectives on globalization that have emerged from the hyper-globalist to the internationalist and the transformationalist approaches. The impact of globalization on the world has to be viewed in relation to the idea of a shrinking world and the need to recognize its multidimensional and multidirectional nature and impact on development and the global south. This involves the examination of three essential dimensions of globalization: techno-economic, social-political, and cultural civilizational. When we look at globalization, we also need to specify areas such as trade, travel, and tourism, and in the process, consider whether globalization is good or bad for development, especially with what we have seen with regards to the impact of the coronavirus on globalization in the third decade of the 21st century. Chairperson, what is more important also to raise is the digitalization of women. This is a key megatrend. A key megatrend has been that of digitalization. There is a global shift towards digitalization that is driving technical, social, or organizational changes. As such, Having the capacity to leverage digital technology has increasingly been identified as essential to ensuring individual well-being and enhancing community and political engagement. Several international actors that include the United Nations have also identified digitalization as a development enabler and having the potential to drive equality. However, the heightened reliance on information and communication technologies resulting from COVID-19 lockdowns has illustrated that many countries, especially in Africa, are not prepared for this drastic digital shift. During the pandemic, governments faced difficulties ensuring inclusivity in the delivery of digital public services. This is particularly apparent in the Global South, where the rapid digitization of public services has deepened structural inequalities and vulnerabilities. Given the shift towards digitization in the face of COVID-19 and the newfound importance of connectivity and digital literacy for accessing public services, the need to bridge the gender divide has become ever more pressing. Women and girls were already disadvantaged in a social development indicators, and the rapid digital shift has threatened to create new gaps while broadening existing ones. In fact, research has shown that women and girls benefited 25% less than men from digital access initiatives during the pandemic, and 1.7 billion, a third more than men, remained unconnected to the internet. Early findings suggest that the lack of equal access to ICT resulted in reduced opportunities for women and girls to continue learning and working during the pandemic, as well as accessing market, financial, and health services. Based on experiences from the pandemic, as well as accessing market, financial, and health services, the pandemic, when it comes to women and girls to access ICT and address social cultural barriers and ensuring access, which has been effectively measured, are the key priorities for advancing gender equality in women's digital empowerment in the Global South. Failing to tackle these challenges will lead to the absence of women and girls in all stages of technological use and design, reproducing digital inequalities on a structural level. Chairperson, I am fortunate. I'm a single mother of 3 children, beautiful children. During the pandemic, because of the ability to have access to technology, I was able to not only teach, guide, educate my children, I continued my studies, and I worked for an income in order to provide for themselves. But what is the best gift, which I am truly grateful for, is that as a mother, I had the opportunity to ensure that that education, training, and guidance that I gave them is helping and assisting them to instill the attributes which the Almighty has and which we, in this era, with a changing world, have to ensure that we keep instilling in our children. And as a mother, and as a girl child, and those mothers of the future, for them to be enabled to have also access to that same facility, there is a need to ensure that there's more emphasis by governments and more interventions by governments to level that playing field between the exposure and development and education of women and girl children in the ICT field. Chair, there's obviously a lot of other obstacles that women and girls face in gaining digital access. We're talking about poor communities whereby such facilities are not easily accessible, whereby technology is not easily affordable. And those are bridges that we can argue and we can push for the leveling of the play field and reaching equality. But if we do not go back, and I think one of the previous speakers addressed it beautifully, if we do not go back to making sure that we educate and we develop ourselves as women and as the girl child, to empower them so that they can have that access to equality. Chair, in conclusion, data gaps and the lack of meaningful indicators that accurately reflect women's agency and capacity to leverage digital tools and a limited participation of women in all phases of technological innovation create and reproduce gender biases in technology that perpetuate a vicious cycle of exclusion. In order to leverage the power of digitalization, governments need to build strategies that mitigate the absence, unavailability, or inaccessibility of historical quality data desegregated by gender, help identify blind spots in data collection, and develop data management systems that can be used across public institutions to create that integrated solutions. Big data and AI support decision-making must be built with rich data sets that reflect a gender balance in both the user interaction and design of digital tools. Digital solutions can only be as inclusive as data and assumptions they are built upon. Therefore, it is vital to uncover those currently invisible in data to understand the critical points at which digital exclusion happens. Women must be content creators and digital developers and fully participate in the production of digital tools and spaces. Bridging the gender-digital divide is not only about improving women and girls' skills and access in the digital realm, but becomes a question of meaningfully influencing technological development to break the vicious cycle of exclusion. Chair, as I come to the conclusion of this speech, I represent a trade union in South Africa called the Public Service and Commercial Union. It is a union that is active also in the public service and in the banking sector and the commercial part of it. I can give Her Majesty the undertaking that her mandate for women to go and rise and stand up in order to ensure that whether it is through education, whether it is through guidance, that playing field is level within our country. And that message will surely, in all aspects, in the spheres in which we operate, will be carried through. And that mandate given by Her Majesty, Her Highness, the Mother of the Nation, will indeed be carried by the Public Service and Commercial Trade Union in South Africa. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Astrid Anani, for your remarks and for carrying forward the remarks of Honorable Thapelo Ahmad. A reminder that his remarks will be made available to everybody online. Thank you for bringing forward those different ideas on the global economy, self-reliance, new technology, AI, global megatrends in climate change, food supply chains, gender bias in data, and data exclusion. We appreciate your remarks today. Next, I'll be inviting up Honorable Fatimatu Abubakar, the Deputy Minister for Information of the Republic of Ghana, and you may give your remarks from your chair, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to stand on all further protocols and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I bring you all warm greetings from the government and people of Ghana, especially from our President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I would also like to use this opportunity to express my profound gratitude to Her Highness Sheikha Fatima bint Mubarak for extending this invitation to me personally and to the government of Ghana for us to have a representation at this global summit for women. I believe when I saw the topic for this particular session, which I believe was carefully selected, I knew the responsibility on my shoulders to do a lot of research to come up with what the role of these global megatrends, what the women's role in these global megatrends are, and most especially the impact they have on women. But I must say that I'm so grateful because I have used this opportunity to learn more than I would have done on the subject matter in a year or more. Let me start by saying that according to the World Economic Forum, in this century that we are, the population of old age, or the aging population, will grow by 300%, while the population of the working class will grow by only 50%. So now more than ever, we should know that with the kind of dynamics we have, if you want to eliminate or exclude about half of the world population who are women, it is almost impossible to achieve prosperity. Likewise, women alone without men will not be able to meet the required workforce that we have within our lifetime. I'm not even talking about our children and grandchildren's generation. So now more than ever, I believe women are in pole position to negotiate for more representation, for inclusion, for parity when it comes to global economic power, when it comes to technology, when it comes to all the mega trends that we are set to talk about. Let me give you a typical story before I run you into some statistics that I would love to share. As of 2017, the annual enrollment of students into high schools in Ghana was 800,000. When the government of Ghana decided that it was time to remove the financial barrier to attending high school and make high school free for all, that number moved from 800,000 to 1.2 million. And guess who comprised of the majority of that additional 400,000? Girls. It should tell you that for a fact, in most patriarchal societies, where families with limited resources are challenged and have the opportunity to educate the children, they are more likely to educate the boys than the girls. It is also established that over the years, centuries, women have built a proven track record of being the best managers of households and families. And I'm talking about discipline, I'm talking about multitasking, I'm talking about distribution of duties, I'm talking about management of scarce resources, among others. But why is it the case that if women are able to efficiently manage a family of 4 or 10 or 20 or even 100 of a traditional large extended families, but when it comes to corporate organizations of even about 10 people or even 50 people, women will not be given the chance to lead in such organizations, but they will be relegated to lower roles or very basic responsibilities, which of course are equally important. But my point is that why not spread the buffet? Why limit women to some particular corner where they are supposed to operate? Because I believe that when it comes to education, it should be primarily about passion and capacity and not gender stereotypes. So I identify a problem, which is a gap between women and opportunities. And I believe that gap is in quality of education for women. I believe that if women are given the right education, they will be piped directly to opportunities because the family or home is a microcosm of larger organizations, including corporate institutions and national governments. So why limit women to studying only literature or nursing, when they can study all the sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics. And especially now, or even now, when we talk about STEM education, it still sounds abstract to a lot of people because of the deficit in explaining the importance of building capacity across board when it comes to science and technology. I am saying this because, for example, if your grandma made the best cookies, and that recipe has been passed on to you as a young woman or girl, STEM is the only way to empower you to test, pass that cookie into quality control, learn to package it, put a barcode on it, and put it on the shelf. STEM is what will empower the young woman to move the traditional tea in their household, which they serve to visitors, into a product that will be sent to the lab to be tested, that will receive certification, canned, and move it across the country or around the world. So the value that is created between the simple things that we do, between the kind of products or knowledge passed down through socialization, and to building women as industrial captains or captains of industry and unicorns, has to do with the quality of education that are given to women. So primarily, as I mentioned, one, if as legislators, if as politicians or women of influence, if we are first of all able to advocate for the financial barrier to educating women to be removed, so that people will have no excuse. In fact, there are families who give their daughters off to marriage because they can't even take care of them. If they had an alternative where the nation is going to educate her in a boarding school, she will be fed, she will be clothed, she will be provided with books, the family doesn't have to pay anything for it, then her being married off as a child marriage will be delayed. By the time she leaves the boarding school, maybe she is above 18. She is afforded the knowledge and capacity to make better choices for herself. And that is why I think if we want to talk about a shift in global economic power, the shift in demography, and the introduction of technology or urbanization, it is important that at the baseline or at the bottom, quality education and free education for women should be the fundamental demand that we as women leaders will demand before we push them into such narratives. Let me also add that when I started by giving the statistics from the World Economic Forum, we are seeing a trend whereby developed countries are seeing population decline. I was with the governor of the Westphalia region of Germany somewhere March 2019, and he mentioned that Germany as a country for a few years until the time we met was losing as much as 1 million of their population annually. I believe it is the case based on statistics available for most developed countries, where they have the factories, where they require the workforce, where they need people. On the reverse, developing countries, mostly in Africa, are seeing unmarked demographic shifts, where Africa as a whole has about 70% of our population under the age of 35. Young people without opportunities, faced with high unemployment rates, and families and mothers who are challenged with the number of mouths to feed, not to think of offering the right education for their children. So we are running into a dead end where we have a population growth in an area with limited resources, with less technical or less educated individuals who, even if they do well, they want to do well, they have the best of plans and intentions, because of lack of capital, because of lack of infrastructure, where governments are limited to exporting all the raw materials and receiving just peanuts in return, there is extreme poverty. Even in the urban centers. Because imagine when a lot of people are moving from rural communities to urban centers, but they can't afford housing, they don't get jobs. Then there is increase in urban poverty. So it has become very important that we have this conversation knowing that when it comes to the shift in global megatrends, it is a must that women are included. And if it is not given, we have to demand it. Let me give another example which has to do with the growth in terms of digital economy. About 20 years ago, where was Facebook? What was Twitter? Who was Snapchat? Nothing of that sort. But today, let's look at where the billionaires are coming from. Let's look at the population of those at Silicon Valley. Let's look at the number of young people who, even without formal education, are challenged and motivated to go into coding, learn about robotics, learn the technologies, because they know the shift in terms of the technological evolution is where the money is. That is where you see the zeros to heroes, because they have seen the Elon Musk, they have seen the Mark Zuckerbergs, who did not have to inherit billions, but with technology they are able to make all that people made in 3, 4, 5 generations in a lifetime. It has become important more than ever that we teach girls technology. We make it an important option for them to take up if one day we need to rely on my gender, your gender, as a critical partner or workforce that we need globally. So in Ghana today, the government has committed to educating 100,000 girls in ICT, where we do boot camps every vacation in rural communities to teach girls coding. I believe this has also encouraged a lot of CSOs or NGOs, non-governmental players, to also invest in coding and teaching people a lot about ICT and innovation. Because of course, not all inventors or innovators or developers will succeed. But imagine, even if one does, it will be a huge, huge improvement or jump in terms of the contributions that we have. But let me also hasten to add that as we fix the pipe, which is quality education between women and also the opportunities that are available for women with these global megatrends, I must say that we are not demanding for these opportunities or representation just because of our sex, but it is because there is statistics and proven record that when women are given the opportunity, they do well. Let me state that a recent study by the Harvard Business School has shown that women have a measurable impact on the bottom line. They stated that venture capital firms that employed women as partners were showing increasing profitability. There are studies to show that women are actually less corrupt. Women are dedicated. They do well when given the task. So the demand or the negotiation to get more representation or gender parity or equity is not just because we want tokenism. It's not for the optics, it's not gimmicks, but really it is because we are important players within this space. And trust me, if this shift excludes women, I don't think there will be much that the world can get from that. Finally, for lack of time, let me state that there is also a study that has shown that although women are most likely to take action when it comes to climate change, if you look at all publications on climate change, including articles, books, everything included, only 28% are from women. Meaning, even though we take the most action, when it comes to putting our work out, the confidence to write, the confidence to lay claim to our work, to say that we are the authority, even in research and other fields, you realize that the women are behind. Either they are intimidated or they are hiding, or sometimes their work is stolen. Sometimes what they did, although is the most important part of the work, is seen as just a mere administrative support. So I want to use this opportunity to encourage all women, especially all of us in this room, that if we miss this fight, or if we fail to champion this cause, it will be there waiting for our daughters and granddaughters to start all over again to advocate for these things that we could have done now to help the cause of women. So it is important that as a woman, even if you don't have a particular subject matter to write about, write your biography. Get help to write your autobiography. Your story matters to millions of women who may not be privileged to sit in a position of influence or power. And let the world hear your voice and give the kind of representation that will be there as a template for women to follow. In Ghana, we have achieved so much because according to the Africa Development Bank, when you look at participation of women in economic activity, Africa is currently leading in terms of participation. Of course, if you want to look at it qualitatively and quantitatively, it will be another issue because maybe you will count women participation, but maybe we are talking about even including businesses on tabletops in kiosks and small businesses which qualitatively in terms of contribution to GDP may not be that much. But I am saying that in Ghana alone, about 70% of women are economically active. They actually work and contribute to our GDP. So I'll use this opportunity to encourage all women to put in the best effort to take advantage of these shifts, including technology, including digitalization and the digital economy. Look at Uber. Now, people used to move from their homes, walk about 100 to 200 meters just to stop a taxi and move. Now, at the comfort of your home, when you share your location, the car will be right in front of your door. Look at digital banking. You don't have to waste time to go into a banking hall to sit in long queues to look at a teller you don't want to see on a bad day. At the comfort of your home, you are able to transact. It is because we have people behind the scene developing and doing a lot of big things. And finally, remember that women's representation is most important in this space because those who are managing the algorithm of various platforms, those who are gatekeepers of these platforms, which whether we like or not is a moving train, that if you fail to join the technological train, you will be left behind. If they are not women, they will not put in the keywords, the important words that will reflect the values and aspirations of women. So that if we put content about advocacy for free sanitary pads for kids, it will not go anywhere. If you are looking for advocacy for girl child education, it will not go anywhere. But someone will post a video on domestic violence that does not portray women in a better light, and then the algorithm is pushing that content into millions and millions of views and ridiculing the hard work of a lot of women around the world. So it is important that we get representation for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Fatimatu Abubakar, for your remarks and your discussion about the cross-applicable skills for women, for managing households, and how that can be applied to other fields too. It makes me think about, in the US, sometimes what we talk about in terms of people that serve in the military and their cross-applicable skills and their pipeline into work. And similarly so, we might think about the skills that women have in managing their households and how that, like you mentioned, can be cross-applicable into the workforce. And in addition, you talked about the importance of education, really as the crux, as the bottom line, as what's most important in terms of this advancement in women, but also not just the opportunity or the existence of education, but also the supportive environment for education, providing the financial means for families such that their girls can go to school, and those different support mechanisms. And I really appreciated your term of the industrial captains, women as the industrial captains. So thank you so much for your speech. And next, we will move to our next panelist, Dr. Olga Pavlova from Moscow State University of Psychology and Education in Russia. And you may take the podium for your remarks.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm really grateful to the organizers for the invitation to take part in the Global Summit of Women. I am a psychologist, and I am greeting you on behalf of the Russian Muslim psychologists. I am a member of the Association of the Psychological Assistant to Muslims. The All-Russian Association was created in Russia in 2017, and the aim of the association is to coordinate the activities of all interested specialists, psychologists, imams, teachers, etc., in the development of Islamic psychology for the successful resolution of the actual psychological problems of Russian Muslims and the provision of spiritually oriented psychological assistance. I had a department of cross-cultural psychology at the Faculty of Social Psychology at Moscow State University of Psychology and Education. I am happy to be here and present you one of the most interesting topics related to the Muslim community. My presentation is devoted to happiness in general and happiness in Islam in particular. One of the indicators of a good life is the feeling of being happy that a person can experience. So today we will look upon this issue. Now I want to go on to content of my presentation. What is happiness? So let us start by defining happiness. It is obvious that understanding of happiness is specific in each area of studies and is related to social specifics and values and the level of life in a country. Since 2012, experts of Earth Institute of the Columbian University have been measuring the level of happiness and ranking countries by happiness level. On the slide, you can see the criteria of happiness and the ranking of Muslim countries according to the level of happiness of the population. What is interesting is that all the criteria are more external than internal. They did not include any kind of psychological aspects. However, indirect indicators of happiness in this research can be considered personal and are related to the level of trust, goodness, and generosity. How to be happier? Different countries deal with the issues of happiness in different ways. For example, Bhutan, Venezuela, and the United Arab Emirates have established ministers of happiness. In the United Arab Emirates, the Ministry of Happiness is headed by a young woman. Also, a new direction is being developed in economics, named the economy of happiness. Economy helps to create conditions for the population to be happier. Economists calculate various indices of happy life, happy planet, gross national happiness, which allows to regard happiness from different perspectives. Since antiquity, there have existed the two opposite approaches to traditions to the understanding of happiness: hedonism and eudaimonism. The first one originates from Aristipp and suggests enjoying life through various ways, maximal meeting one's needs. The second approach is based on Aristotle's views. He considered that attaining happiness is a certain form of soul's activity. The way to happiness in this context is related to forming the virtues of their personality. In psychology of the 20th century, there were attempts to research eudaimonic ways to happiness. As to hedonism, there are no certain descriptors either among philosophers or among psychologists. Eudaimonic approach is regarded differently by psychologists. The word eudaimonia derives from an ancient Greek root daimon, which means internal force. The idea of this notion is that people live in accordance with their true self. They can say that hedonism and eudaimonism, considering happiness as the highest good, differ in understanding what the highest good is. The first one reduces to a balance of positive and negative emotions, and the second, without denying this balance, introduce additional dimensions related to virtue, activity, conformity to the true self. At the core of the true self of a Muslim life fitra, that is belief in the experience of Creator. Realizing our fitra should be the goal of every Muslim. Moving on to the ideas of hedonism in Muslim society, we should mention that Muslim society refers to the collectivist culture. Psychologists draw our attention to the fact that in collectivist cultures, one of the main elements of happiness is collectivist meaning of life. And harmony between a person and society is considered to be fundamental for mental well-being of the people. What happens to hedonism in the Muslim cultures? You can see there the values of the Muslim peoples in Russia. Self-indulgence, hedonism, became one of the least preferred values. As psychologists often explain happiness through the parameters of psychological well-being, then it is necessary to turn to the ideas of Islam about happiness and psychological well-being. According to World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of illness or infirmity. Accordingly, a healthy person must have spiritual health and social well-being. In Islam, there is a concept, al-afiyah, well-being, health, feeling good, vitality. This concept from Islam quite correlates with positive psychology, that is positive psychology of a Muslim. What does the eudaimonic path to happiness look like in the Islamic traditions? An outstanding Muslim scholar, who is rightly called the first Muslim psychotherapist, Abu Yusuf Ishaq al-Kindi, said, "We should strive to make us happy and protect ourselves from becoming unhappy." The founder of Falsafa outlined some habits that help protect a Muslim against harm and troubles in his 10 psychotherapy tips. For example, Al-Kindi recommends avoiding actions that lead to disappointment. To be happy, we have to remember that all sorrows are temporary and sadness disappears with time. Al-Kindi works laid the foundation for the development of Falsafa, an Arabic Muslim philosophy, in which many eminent scholars developed their understanding of happiness, and also revealed the foundations of morality and ethics in the Islamic scientific thought, forming the foundation of akhlaq. Falasic works design a harmony society that only harmonious individuals can build. For example, it is Virtue City by Al-Farabi, Spiritual City by Ikhwan al-Safa, A Fair City by Ibn Sina, Perfect City by Ibn Bajjah, The Virtue City by Ibn Rushd. In all these writings, the eudaimonic view on the attainment of happiness is considered. The path to attaining happiness through morality and spiritual development, improvement of mind and spiritual development of its abilities. Many verses of the Quran indicate to us that negative emotions and other problems cannot destroy the true believer's stability. The idea that our thought, beliefs, and our behavior play an important role in including our emotion is a very common idea in the Quran. As you can see, happiness is a category which initially was studied by philosophers both in antiquity and Arab Muslim philosophy. Happiness is a psychological concept, has been studied from roughly 50 years only. And psychologists are making conclusions similar to those which the philosophers have made. Psychological health of a person is based on a healthy, rational system of values. The basis of a healthy, rational system of values is ethics and morality. So we have come to conclusions, and let me summarize the main ideas of my presentation. The concept of happiness and its perception has its own specifics in different cultures. And there are two main approaches to looking at happiness in philosophy: hedonism and eudaimonism. Muslim communities are collectivists, so happiness of an individual is viewed as closely related to the public good. The harmony between an individual and society is viewed fundamental to the psychological well-being of a person. Concept happiness among Muslims is directly related to the religious values and worldview, as well as to the peculiarities of ethnic culture. For a Muslim, the path to happiness is associated with improving his character and the formation of moral values and behavior. Modern psychology and psychotherapy develop ideas about moral psychology and ways of its formation as the basis of psychological well-being or a personality. Thank you for your attention. I hope my presentation was interesting and useful for you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Dr. Olga Pavlova, for your remarks and for helping us to recall our why as we consider mega trends. We're thinking about, our path towards happiness and well-being, and the lens of hedonism and eudaimonia helps us to better understand our path towards these mega trends, and then necessity to consider morality and ethics in our path in those directions. Now, as this panel comes to an end, we are fortunate to also have Her Excellency Sarah Zimmerman Duterte, Vice President of the Philippines, who has prepared a recorded remark that will be played shortly on your screens.
Assalamu alaikum. Good day to everyone. I sincerely congratulate all the women behind the success of the Global Summit for Women 2023. I thank our fellow women, particularly the patronage of Her Highness Sheikha Fatima bint Mubarak through the General Women's Union Supreme Council for Motherhood and Childhood and Family Development Foundation for spearheading this significant occasion in our shared cause for women's empowerment. Our fight for gender parity and equality continues, and victories should not stop in our celebrations, but should all the more ignite the fire in us to work harder, to support, assist, inspire, and lift our fellow women who need our strength, our position, our influence, our power. While women leaders across the globe have gained significant strides in the past decades, many leadership roles are still relegated to men, who are expected to constantly make the decisions and influence the norms. This gathering is a testament to our unceasing commitment to women's causes that has championed the significant role of women in society. As the movement for women empowerment gains ground, may we translate the gains of our common advocacies to platforms that raise deeper knowledge on gender equality and empowerment. With our present environmental, political, and eco-social issues today, women play a key role in contributing to our peace-building, recovery, and rebuilding efforts by nurturing the values of inclusivity and dignity. It is my hope that our continuing efforts in voicing the most pressing concerns of women and children will inspire collective action and fuel more initiatives for self-empowerment, community building and rebuilding, and inclusive growth. Let us continue to empower women, transcend socio-cultural limitations, and pave avenues that celebrate equality and transformative leadership toward a more progressive and empowered global citizenship. All for God, country, and family. Shukran.
As we close this session, one final thank you to Sheikha Fatima bint Mubarak, who has put together and thought through and spearheaded all of these amazing initiatives and bringing everybody together, and a big thank you to the organizers. Thank you, everyone.
نشكر كلا من رئيسة الجلسة الدكتورة جينيفر شيفينسكي نائب مسؤول الصحة العامة في مقاطعة ريفرسايد، كما نشكر المتحدثين معالي مانشيندا وزير دولة لشؤون المرأة في كمبوديا، ونشكر معالي فاطمة أبو بكر وزيرة الاتصال في جمهورية غانا، كما نشكر الدكتورة أوليغا بافلوفو جامعة موسكو لعلم النفس والتعليم بروسيا. العالمية للمرأة نتقدم لكم بالشكر على حضوركم المميز والمتحدثين الذين أثروا جلسات القمة. شكرا لكم.